So we have started this webinar series as part of the Wow Web of Wellbeing project, and really, you know, the Wow Web of Wellbeing webinar series is dedicated to talking to like educators about the principles behind well-being and mental health. And basically, all over the world, Wow mentors are sharing the principles behind the human experience with young people. And we're hoping that this work is to ensure that our youth and people of the future have a chance to lead their lives with psychological ease and a kind of freedom, really. And we kind of looked at different sort of subjects, and you know, different WOW mentors and coaches have been inspired to talk about different subjects that are quite apt for really the you know, educational kind of systems and in schools and things like that. And tonight we have lovely Terri talking to us about a growth mindset. And I'm going to let Terri introduce herself and go from there. So thank you.
Savannah. So Terri Broughton, ex-head of school, secondary. I retired 2 years ago. I came, well, 2.5 years ago. I came to the principals at the same time, 2.5 years ago. I left school and joined a course. It was either begin a doctorate in coaching to take those further. I looked into sort of lots of popular psychologies and became a trainer of NLP and was trained in counselling and various other things. But until really I came across this understanding 2.5 years ago, for me this was the missing link. So I had a choice to go to one or the other, and I decided to join Jamie Smart's Clarity coaching course and went on to become a trainer of that. And I now coach people from lots of different walks of life. It can be a CEO in America, it could be a housewife in the UK, it could be anybody from any walk of life. But I have the privilege of going into schools also. 2 weeks ago, I was in a school working with 10 labelled, I hardly dare use the term unteachable boys. And it just such a privilege to go and work with them and to share this understanding. Yeah, I'll talk a bit more about that as we go along. So that's me, that's what I do. Yeah, and I'll talk about growth mindset a little bit. It's a popular term actually in schools, and often I'm asked to go in and can I please go and teach about the growth mindset or show people how to have a growth mindset. And it was a term that was coined by somebody called Carol Dweck, who is a professor of psychology from Stanford University. And she was focusing on why people succeed, what makes them succeed and others not succeed. Hence the term fixed versus growth mindset. But it's a label to describe her research. I looked online earlier and it said the growth mindset. Educators can help students develop a growth mindset by teaching them about their amazing qualities of the brain. And a fixed mindset, it says people believe their basic qualities like their intelligence or talent are simply fixed traits, and they believe that talent alone creates success. And even that makes me scratch my head from the get-go, really, because I think very differently to that. So I listened to the sort of fixed versus growth mindset. I've done papers for leadership teams on the differences between the two, and we've had amazing conversations. But I don't believe there is such a thing as a fixed mindset. I don't believe that. And if I believed, when I went into schools to work with some people they're telling me are unteachable, or I'd be on a really sticky wicket if I thought that to be true. I kind of think, what are we training our children for when I go into schools? But before I go on, I'd like this to be, I'm going to talk for a little while, but I'd like this to be an open dialogue, not just me talking like I'm at the front of a class. So if you've got anything to say or any questions, I'd really welcome them and get a dialogue going rather than me just talking from the front here. But I've started to wonder more and more and more, what are we training our children for? You know, 80%, they say 80% of jobs in the future, we don't even know what they're going to be yet, because things are going so fast. You know, you look at artificial intelligence, you look at driverless cars coming on the market, you look at, you know, we don't even know that humans are beginning to not understand the algorithms of Google. You know, what are we training children for? Just sort of makes me scratch my head a little bit. And how much more now than ever do we need them to have confidence and resilience and resourcefulness? I kind of think if they understand this thought, feeling connection, if they understand, or if they could understand who they really are, that they're built for reality, they're built for this resilience. That's that for staff as well, not just for children. That alone would make the difference. If they could sort of understand where their experience was coming from, both in and outside of schools. And I was thinking, if you just ask yourself right now, you know, the group of us that are here now, and you were to put yourself on this spectrum of fixed versus growth mindset, where would you put yourself right now? You know, if there was an arrow and you had to place yourself along it, you know, because it will change, guaranteed. You know, we move up and down, we come in and out of our thinking. So I don't think there is anything that is fixed. I was reading some papers earlier, and it says communication skills are at the heart of learning. Well, there may be some truth in that, but isn't it all about connection? Connecting with, I remember saying to staff in the school, you know, meet the children at the door with your biggest smile on your face and welcome them into your room. Let them know that you want them to be there. And we'd have people meeting people at the door and saying the right things, but without sort of calibrating or connecting to who's coming into that room. Kids pick up on it like that. They know whether they're welcome. And the mindset that you are in at any given moment in time does affect whether you're taking in or not information. Jamie speaks in his book, I'm trying to think where he got it from, about volatility. The world we're living in is full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And the more research that I look at, the more I see that to be true. And then he speaks about, with this understanding about the three principles that we talk about, which again is a brand. You know, we're looking at vision, understanding, clarity, and agility, and the possibility of sort of facing the future. I kind of feel that, I don't know about you, but people are becoming more connected at the moment with their values and what matters to them, or at least that's been in my experience when I'm going into schools and I talk about this understanding. There's more, to my mind, more people sort of nodding their heads and sort of saying, yeah, that's how it is, that's how it is. But it's like, well, okay, how do we get that into our schools? How do we make this connection? If you think now, let's just have a chat with each other, but what did you used to like to play as a kid, as a child? What sort of games did you used to like to play?
I would say one of my favorite memories before my parents moved to Canada was we had this big square where all the kids would meet, and we would play British Bulldog, you know, Red Rover. And it was just brilliant. The space couldn't have been designed better. It was just in the middle of all of our houses.
Yeah, yeah. So you're all meeting together and playing.
Yeah.
What about you, Louise?
Sorry, I was just finding my mute button. Yeah, for me, what springs to mind is two. One is rounders and the other is with a big skipping rope, that we took turns of holding the big rope and we went running and jumping in. And there was just a queue of people waiting to have their turn, either on the rope or jumping in. Yeah.
Interesting, both mentioning singing games. Anybody else? What, Diane? Anything you liked to do as a kid? You started to play?
Well, yeah, I'm from Liverpool, so obviously we played football.
Yeah.
But when we were, I suppose we were primary age, we used to invent things. We used to play all sorts of games. We were like plays, you know. It wasn't just lads playing, there were girls. It was, you'd invent things. Family life, cowboys and Indians, soldiers, you name it. It was, you know, the imagination would run rife.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing. Diane, what did you used to like to play? Do you remember?
The first thing that came to mind was cars. I used to love collecting the Cadburys at that time and go and exchange them for cars. But as I listened, I was crazy about it. But as Louise was talking, as Alan, I remember that we used to go to the unbuilt areas and set up, we used to play cowboys and Indians and nurses and whatever. And we just used to be really creative.
Yeah, and that's involved in all of this. And how about you, Ivana?
Oh gosh, listening to all of you sort of speak, probably bits of all of that. Definitely kind of the imagination of, you know, spending time with other friends and children and kind of creating games, and like a lot of acting things out, and we also loved, like, you know, around schoolwork time we played that elastic band thing between, you know, two people stand and then you kind of play a game, and then, you know, somebody was sort of tell, well, this is the way the game goes, and then we, you know, kind of try to create our own thing out of it as well, and new kind of moves and stuff. So yes, it's been a lot of time and space for imagination, for sure.
When I ask teachers this, or teams in schools, I fill up flip chart paper. It's just absolutely full, and they're screaming out what they used to like to play. And then I ask them, and I won't do that now, but then I ask them, well, what skills and attributes did you need to play those games? And we pull out all the skills and attributes. And then we talk about, well, what makes a good learner? What makes a good learner in a school? And it's guaranteed that the skills and the attributes they pull out are all the things that make a good learner. And yet what makes they just talk about how playing these games was fun and exciting, and they wanted to be there, and they wanted to learn more, and they wanted to find out more about the games. And it was about risk taking. And somehow, somewhere, that gets a little bit lost in education. And, you know, a little bit exciting, those games. Exciting, I've put daring, where you can be free, where there are new possibilities and there are opportunities. And what I find scary is I say, we talk about what makes a good learner, and I say, well, what percentage of your students or pupils in this school do you think have those attributes? I was in a school not so long ago where they said 20%? 20% of our students have those attributes? And I'm asking what people like to do as a child, as a young child, and they were freely telling me. And then I said, well, what percentage of your people, of your teachers or support staff or your canteen staff or have those attributes? But I haven't had a school that said to me 100%. I've never had that. And if I relate that back to fixed versus growth mindset, it just makes me scratch my head a little bit.
Sorry, Terry, sorry, you just gone mute. Hold on a second. Unmuting you now. Sorry, just for a moment you went mute. I'm not sure what happened.
So Stephen Moss, he wrote Natural Childhood. He said, young people are 3 times more likely to be treated in hospital for falling out of bed than they are for falling out of a tree. And then I thought, well, learning how to fall out of a tree. I mean, I can remember falling onto concrete playgrounds in the sickening thud, but I learned what not to do the next time I got on that swing with the metal rungs. And we live in a world now where we think we appear to think that it's not okay to fail. You know, like we have to be the best or get the best grades or get the Ofsted grades you know, where are we looking at that? And if you look at a kind of child of, I don't know, 18 months, I look at my grandchildren, they are responsive to feedback. They're resilient, they're risk-taking, they have relentless curiosity. They've got brilliant communication skills. They're making connections all the time. I was speaking at a conference the other day. It was a conference, I was speaking at Liz and Stuart's. And I was looking at the difference between some paintings painted by 16-year-olds and a painting from a child in a primary school. And the difference is enormous. They were looking at how they saw themselves, and the young child's was of a butterfly, full of hope and promise, and had glitter on it. It was yellow and reds and amazing colours. And I looked at the teenagers' work, and it was sort of pipes going into heads. It was about education, feeding them full of information, with gags on and blindfolds on and restrictions around their arms. And there was a young girl who had, she'd painted herself, but as an advent calendar. So you could open doors, and she had this tiny little mouth and lightning behind her eyes and a padlock on. You couldn't get into some places. And I thought, goodness, is this what happens in education between this age and this age? And then I thought, is this what happens to us, you know, outside of school between those ages? A long time ago now, I was asked, before I went into, I'd just gone into leadership at the time, and I was asked to speak at a deputy heads conference. And the guy that I was very nervous. I wasn't sure it was something I wanted to do. And the guy said to me, you'll need lots of PowerPoints. And I wasn't a very PowerPointy person then, but okay, lots of PowerPoints. I knew nothing about this conference. And he said, make sure they're wordy, because they like lots of words, they like to understand. So I put lots of words on my PowerPoints, trying to please. I turned up at this conference. It was a 2-day conference. Someone called Mike Hughes was the speaker on the first day, and someone was saying, yeah, you know him. And someone was saying, he's really inspirational. I hope you're inspirational. And I was very, very nervous, you know, way up my comfort zone. I'd never done it before. And I was thinking, okay, I've got my PowerPoints, I've got my words. Oh, suit, buy a suit. He said, buy a suit, you must wear a suit. And I thought, oh, you know, I've got to wear a suit, PowerPoints, lots of words, inspirational. I could feel the nerves building up. The person next to me, Mike Hughes, was very funny. She nudged me in my ribs. She said, I hope you're funny when you speak. I thought, oh, I must be funny, I must be funny. So I was the speaker on the second day. And they said to me, or the person I was sitting to, they were just going to lunch. They said, they call your slot the graveyard slot shift or something. So I said, okay. So she said, I hope you're motivational. We need motivating, because we would have had a big lunch. We've all been on the beer in the night time. You know, make it. So I went and sat in my car. I didn't go out to lunch with everybody else, absolutely beside myself with nerves. So I had this big build. I was something called an advanced skills teacher then. And I had this big, she's not like any advanced skills teacher, sort of accolade. So I stood there with my twin set and pearls and suit. It's just not me. With my PowerPoints, I'd written across them, trying to be funny, I'm diagnosed as dyslexic, not that I ever use that for anything, but writing across lots of words the lots of words didn't help in the first place, let alone my writing across them. And I stood there and was introduced, had this massive build-up, and I started to tell a story. And they were lovely people in that room, and they were nodding their heads, and they were willing me to do well. I could see it, but I was stuck in my head. I was stuck in my thinking. And I was trying to tell this story, and the guy that introduced me, the deputy from the school I was at, was pushing his arms like this. Go on, go on, go on. And I was like a rabbit in the headlights. And eventually, in this crowd of people, I looked across, I saw one chair, and it was mine. And I thought, I've got to get from here to there, because I couldn't do what I'd been asked to do. And I sat down on that day to this one person. I didn't cry, but I sat there and just thought, you know, my career's up the window, fixed mindset, failed. I went home that night. My husband was working in Ecuador, so I was at home on my own. I did cry then. And all evening I was saying, what is there to learn here? What is there to learn here? There must be something to learn. There must be. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, this little, small, still voice that I still get just whispered to me, if you're not going to be yourself and you're not going to be that honestly, I'm not playing. I'm not playing this game. Now, according to Carol Dweck, if that thinking is fixed mindset, it's pretty fixed mindset. But had I have not had that experience of failing, and I failed miserably, I would never have learned the lesson I learned on that day. And I think I would have continued trying to be somebody I wasn't. If we only teach our kids that what they have going on for them is far greater than the pressure that we're piling on out here. What they have going on for them is this innate resilience. And, you know, I speak to students about the diamond inside. And I know lots of people call it different things. But I think over time, that diamond does get covered in poo. I mean, I certainly covered mine up. And if you're a professional practitioner, you know, you don't want people to see that poo. So we coat it with varnish, thinking, okay, let you know, even as a head, you know, I did that at times, wanting to be seen as this kind of professional practitioner, hoping that people would not see that poo, you know, and I could think of all sorts of reasons why that was there. And I had a whole story to go with every lump that was there. But the truth is, that's not who we are. You know, we're born to have a growth mindset. This pliable plastic brain that we have, it's more than that. It's about mind. And that's behind all of that. That's behind all of that. One of my feedback forms from that conference amazingly said, her vulnerability drew me to her. So somewhere along the line, there was a positive bit of feedback, which I wasn't expecting. So my question to you really, and I'm not asking you to answer it on this webinar, but when do you do your best learning? I mean, that was the best. That was best learning for me. And it was through getting it wrong. And in school, if only we gave the opportunity for kids to try and fail, and teachers to try new ways of working with children and fail and learn from it and put something else in place. Taking chances, taking risks, really. So we can all keep our heads down. We can all sort of do our job, not put our head above the parapet, because that means not taking any risks. But it also means that not only do other people not see our potential or our resilience, maybe we don't. this is so old hat now, but Michael Jordan, I love his quote. He says, "I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that's why I succeed." And whilst I came in saying the growth mindset is a label, which it is, I believe that's what leads to it. 3 principles, a label. We label all sorts of things. And how do you label something that is so formless? Courage, the word courage, means to speak one's mind by telling all of our heart. And the cœur of courage means heart. And I love that. And I wish there was more of that. And I think there could be more of it in education, with people like Alan, with people like, well, everyone on this call, going out there through the WOW project by sharing this understanding. I went into a school for the WOW project very recently, worked with these 10 boys that I mentioned earlier. They were split into 2 groups of 5. If I believe the emails I had before I went into that school, I'm not saying I wouldn't have gone in, but I certainly went in with lots of thinking. My heart was thumping. I didn't know who I was going to get in front of me. They were aged 10. I'd asked them to be split into 2 groups of 5. Who I met that day, well, I had the first group for 4 hours, the second group for 2.5, and then it swapped the following day, and then the third day with staff and observing these children in lessons. Who I saw was not what was written on a piece of paper that day. And when it came to the diamond inside, when it came to talking about that, they had more of an understanding than any adult I've ever spoken to. They were talking about mighty, strong, love. The words that they were coming out with was just incredible. The group that came in the afternoon, they said to me, now these are different from the first group. The first group you've had, they were quite surprised because they were very engaged in the learning. And I wanted to put a lot of it over to them rather than me being an entertainer at the front of the room. And then in the afternoon, there was a group of more, they call them disengaged boys. And they were saying, you'll be, these boys, they might not speak. You might not get a conversation out of them. They don't put their hands up in the classroom. And so all I did, and it really is about calibrating and connecting with staff as leaders, with the children as teachers and support workers and cooks and cleaners, and where are they coming from? I'm really genuinely connecting with them. So I said to these boys as they came in, who can speak Japanese? And I think they were a bit surprised. They were like, no. And it was kind of, no, not boys like us. Anyway, it's an old hat way of teaching people Japanese by doing actions and writing the words down and drawing pictures. Within less than an hour, they were all speaking Japanese. You could see their little chests go up. They'd chosen these kind of feeling cards to start with, how they were feeling when they came in. It was nervous and shy, and then halfway through they were circling where they were, and you could see their confidence growing. And then we went on to learn a little bit about this understanding. And then the following day I had them for 4 hours, and they came in the morning and they held their hands like this and they said, "Konnichiwa." So someone had obviously told them that. But one of the boys who was absent started to count. I was saying, were you all being good parrots yesterday, or did you really learn this? How do you know you really learned it? So we were having a conversation. And the boy that was absent also joined in. And I said, that's amazing. Could you already speak Japanese? And he said, no. And I said, but you were counting with those boys. How did that happen? And these young lads had come into school purposefully early. They were drawing pictures with the other lad. They were showing him the actions. They stayed with him till he'd got it. Then they came into my room. And this was all before school started. And as we were going through the project, I'd written a story. I was telling them a story, and we were talking about various things to do with the principles and the thought-feeling connection. That was just so insightful. But it was so quiet in the room. There was such a lovely feeling in the room. I turned to the boy on my right, the one that was absent the day before. And I was just about to say, what are you thinking now? But there was such a lovely feeling. I looked at him and I said, what are you feeling now? And he said, I feel loved. I think everybody in that room felt that in that moment, including myself, including the observers, including, I had a coach in there who was also coming in to, if that's not a growth mindset, I don't know what it is. And you know, the kids feel, you know, I'd written all these objectives about what we'd be doing throughout the day for the staff. They saw them. I was able to write a letter to parents with comments that the children had made about their learning. I followed them into their classes the following day. I mean, obviously I noticed things, but it was quite incredible. The lads that wouldn't normally participate, their hands were up, they were picking up musical instruments, they were having a go, they were singing a song about having a go. They've since taken an assembly. I've sent some ideas for lessons. I'm back in there in November to give some follow-up. And then it's just finding some sort of materials to support those staff to make that sustainable within their school. The leadership team are really keen to find out more. I could just go on forever, and I'm aware that I'm talking. So if I just stop there, perhaps we could have a conversation between us.